Welcome everybody to our Q&A with A&J. We are going to talk about from video to victory today. So Jen Juergens and myself, we are the owners of One Bold Step, and so there's our contact information there. And really we're a marketing operations firm, and we believe everything, especially marketing, can be more efficient. So we apply lean principles. And so what really that means is we create systems, order, and accountability to help companies grow and increase demand. So we believe everything is measurable, especially marketing, and it's a value add and not overhead. So that's a little bit about us. Cynthia, welcome. We always love to have you. Thank you for joining us. We've been working with you a little bit actually more than a little bit. There's been quite a few projects we've worked on, especially in the last probably year to 2 years. So thank you very much for joining us. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you. And first of all, thanks for having me. It is always fun to work with folks who have complementary skills and talents. So I own a media production company, it's CK&Co, and we've actually been around for a very, very long time, but so we're kind of old hands at video, but we've learned a lot of new tricks. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about the organization that I have is that we know enough to stay in our own lane. So we love the marketing folks who have that marketing expertise, and we have the video expertise, and we kind of bring those things together. And it's really exciting to see what we can do for companies. Most of our companies are large, but we do work with medium and small companies, and we kind of tailor things. So we're happy to be here today.
Thank you. It was, I actually got to listen and organize Cynthia presenting on a panel discussion for AMA. And I said then, like, she needs to join one of our webinars. She needs to join one of our Q&A with A&J because you did such a great job. So thank you.
Well, thanks.
So why Q&A with A&J? If you've participated in the past, you know we are trying to get out of the Zoom fatigue, and we realize there are a lot of questions that are happening. There are a lot of marketing questions that people had because they had to pivot kind of in a pandemic. And so we started this just as a way to, you know, have this conversation with individuals and get to know you and just try to answer those questions as the best we could. So we decided to do it this way and make it interactive. So once again, like I said, please turn on your video if you do have those questions so we can see your face. We're just trying to make it more interactive. So thank you. So let's kick this off. Let's talk a little bit about a brief history of video, Cynthia.
So I love to talk about history because everyone talks about video as this great new thing and everyone wants to use it. And when you look at the history of video, it really started in 1941, long before I was born. And I think, you know, what we've really seen, though, is an intensification of it. And certainly YouTube was the game changer. That's when everything started going viral. The thing that I love to look at is when we talk about the increase of it, and Cisco Technologies, who's actually a client of mine, we do a lot of work for them, does these projections. And I remember when they were looking at how much video was going to be on the internet in 2019, and they surpassed it before they ever got there. And now the projections are out to 2023, and they're surpassing those projections. So the thing we can say is 1 million minutes of video crosses the internet every second. That's a lot of video. It certainly has become something that people need to have as a part of their kind of portfolio so that they can have it. And the thing that really, I think, has made people probably more aware of it is the smart devices. So if you look at your little smart device and you think about, can I read something on this little device here? You can't. It's teeny tiny, especially as you get older. That's why video has become so popular, because of all of the proliferation of this, and people like to watch something. So we're going to see a lot more mobile video. So let's move to today and tomorrow, because I think that's something that we want to talk about. There's new formats. Certainly video, there was 4K, now there's 5K. But there's also a lot of other things. There's the proliferation of augmented reality in video, where you can be somewhere that you're really not. There's new specifications for video, so you'll notice things download a lot faster. And then you're seeing more people be able to access because there's more broadband connectivity. Length shorter is better. We're all kind of a little ADD. And the focus now is really on real people. It used to be that we would hire a lot of actors. We still hire actors. But today people want to know about real people. What's real person's experience with a company? So what's ahead? The reliance on video, it's going to continue. I think you're going to see a lot less of the salesy approach and a lot more of the storytelling. And what we are seeing is when we look at projections, people are allocating more and more of their marketing dollars to video as opposed to print and some of the other things. So that's kind of my look at today and tomorrow.
Well, Tom brings up, and he's commenting here, talks about video is a broad term depending on the outlet. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that because we had some questions in regard to, do you shoot videos differently depending on the outlet? So if it's TV, if it's Facebook, if it's Instagram. So I think we'll get to those points. But thank you, Tom, for asking those questions.
Okay. Yep.
So how do you maximize the video? How do you maximize that asset, Jen?
Well, this is one of the things that we love to do at One Bold Step. It's to take a piece and to repurpose it in every possible way to get the biggest bang for that marketing investment. And video is no exception. In fact, video gives us so many ways that we can repurpose and reuse the content that we've come to love it. And I just put 2 examples out here. So CK and Co did a wonderful series for One Bold Step, talking about our why. But what we turned that into is we had their shorts, right, CK, and then we had our longer one, which was still only 2 minutes. But we took that piece and we created an ongoing stream of social media posts about it. About the clips, about the longer piece, and it's constantly driving people back. Now, how long ago did we film this, Cynthia? Was it a year?
I think it's a little more than a year.
More than a year. Another one of these clips, I just saw it pass through our social channels again last week. Mm-hmm. So you can get a lot out of these things. We also created a resources page on our website. So in addition to a YouTube channel, you've also got these now relisted on the resources page. And then this content is so good to use. When somebody asks me a question about what we do, I don't have to tell them again. This also helps enormously with our scale, is that we can use the answers, our videos, to answer their questions rather in our follow-up emails. So our newsletters, even some of our one-off campaigns will contain these video clips. Another example that I absolutely love is for one of our clients, Insight Business Solutions. We did a very lengthy panel discussion around the future of IT and the supply chain, which is very heady, very in-depth. No one was going to watch that whole thing. I think it was almost an hour and a half long.
Way to admit that.
But it was such great content. So we ran it through a transcription service. So in addition, and we actually broke it down into 3 or 4 different blog posts. So all of the questions that were asked, we transcribed that to text. And then we took the answers and did those long form content on their blog site. This is by far their most popular blog post, and it is keyword rich, and they didn't write down a single word. They just said it. So, and we have promoted this piece over and over again. So one of my favorite things to do, if you make a video, transcribe it. It's got so much SEO power, you wouldn't even believe it.
And this goes to almost answers Tom's question too about should you use it in different mediums? And the answer is yes. Even when you think about this, the short clips for social, you can use those on Facebook. You can embed those in Facebook. You can use Facebook service for that. And so yes, definitely breaking it down so you can have small bite-sized chunks.
And I have to say one more thing about this, because when you have people on a panel and they come from different organizations and different companies, they're all going to want to promote this. So the fact that it's our, our most popular blog doesn't surprise me, because, the Michigan Manufacturing Association was sharing it, Disher, all these other organizations that were on the panel shared it as well. So that's also something to think about. If you're featuring someone in your video, like a customer, they might want to share that video out as well and give you that added exposure.
Cynthia, you were gonna, I think, add something.
Well, and one of the things that I think people don't think about is, the transcription. And this is just a little tidbit, a group called TEMI transcription, very inexpensive, and they're so fast you can't believe it. I mean, you send it and it's back at you. So that's something that if you're thinking about doing that, it's well worth it.
Should we mention that in our follow-up emails? TEMI?
TEMI. Yep.
We just transcribed a 52-minute webinar in seconds, and it was very cheap.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Good deal.
So, a couple other things, just getting more out of your video. It's I think that's a lot of questions that we had. How do you utilize video and get more out of it?
Well, so one of the things that I think you have to think about is what we try to do is look at an organization and figure out what are the opportunities that we have. So in the case of our joint client Weather Shield, what we did is we did one great interview with the owner of the company. And that one interview was enough content for us to do 3 different pieces: an overview. We did kind of a financial thing, like why would you use this company? And then created some B-roll that they were able to use on their front page. We did 3 shoots at different sites, approximately an hour each. So if you look at that, about, maybe 1 hour to shoot and another 3 hours. So in 4 hours, we got 8 different pieces. And then we took all those things and used them into social media shorts. Taken, a larger company with a more complex thing, Siemens Panorama Towers. We spent 1 day on site. Out of that, we came up with 5 different videos, one about multi-use real estate, one about security, one about, building systems. We took that, we turned it into 6 social media shorts and 1 internal video. We actually had the salespeople teach other salespeople. So while we were interviewing them for this externally facing thing, we got what are some best practices that you can share with other salespeople who are trying to sell this kind of project? So I think that's the thing you need to think of. And you need to think of this up front, because when you're out shooting, that's cheap to ask an extra question or 2, right? And so if you can do that, you then can leverage it later.
I think it's important, and I'm glad you called this out, Cynthia, because I think a lot of times when you think of video, you think of big productions and like big production video shoots, and that's changed a lot. Yes, that still happens, and what you need and what you're going for in your audience. But it's nice to call out that even this Weather Shield example, 1 interview, some B-roll shots, it's not this full, week-long video production shoot.
Yeah. And what I think is, you don't want to overproduce and you don't want to underproduce. So this is where you can think about what's the best way to do it and be efficient with it.
So this wouldn't be a Q&A with A&J if we didn't talk about ROI, because that's kind of our mantra of like, it has to return on, marketing investment at least. So this is always going to be a slide for us, I think. But Jen, talk a little bit, how do we prove video ROI?
Well, in our case, we're big on having systems in place that track things. I'll go back to my Peter Drucker. We can't measure it, we can't manage it, right? So I like to put video inside of some kind of campaign. So in our case, that's typically HubSpot, which means that the video is just one element, and the campaign might also include all the social media posts, the emails that are sent out about it, the web page or pages where it's hosted, so that we're always measuring not just that one asset by itself, but how people are actually consuming it. If you don't have something like that, you're going to have to get a little creative. But when you're talking about how did the video work, did it prove ROI, you're going to want to be able to talk about leads, visits, downloads, and you might have to pull that data from different sources. The other thing that I love about video, anybody seen Galaxy Quest? It's part of your historical documents, right? So these videos, you know, in the movie, these aliens come down because they've seen the historical files. Well, they weren't historical files; they were a TV show, but they believe it to be true, and they live, right? The videos continue to live, and unless you completely changed who you are and what you're trying to do, you should keep them around because they never stop promoting you. They're always out there. And like we do, and I said earlier, we slice it, we dice it, we serve it up again and again. I mean, Cynthia, we talked about, oh gosh, Vance Pines or somebody else, where when we have done an interview and we have all of this beautiful footage, when we go to do backgrounds on web pages or other things, I always say, oh, wait, what do we already have in the hopper? What did we already make that we could repurpose and reuse? And more often than not, we go back to that B-roll and end up repurposing it. Technology definitely helps. I mentioned HubSpot. We've also worked with Wistia, and I think Adam's going to cover this more down below in the questions because there were a lot of questions about technology.
Yes.
But because, to Cynthia's point, YouTube is so prevalent, right? I included this example here. This is one of our clients using YouTube as an extension of their brand. So even though some of these videos are older, they went through and you can kind of see the theme that's coming out of it. And little by little, they're making sure that all of the fronts of their videos reflect the brand that they are today. So even though it's YouTube, they're making it look like Smarter Services. And I think that's a really smart idea. And then the one thing that drives Adam crazy, if you post a video somewhere other than your site, you have to make sure that it links back to your site. Otherwise, you're just putting it out there and you're losing that exposure and that opportunity to draw somebody further into your story and your brand. Did I miss?
That could be a simple link to your website, but it also could be maybe it's a product or service you talked about and linked directly to a page that can help them. It's a missed opportunity when people only put a description in for the video and they never link back to their website. And I see it almost daily and I cringe. So it makes me feel bad. It's like, just do this, link it back, please.
Yeah, definitely. And Adam, just to add to that, I think what we've started to do even is in our YouTube page, especially for Smarter Services, we've been adding, hey, go follow us on social media, go follow us on our blog. So there's even more opportunities to link back to some of those ways that you can create lead generation very easily as well.
Thank you, Danielle.
Can we take a second and respond to Paula, because we got a question here. What type of planning is required to deliver several pieces? So the operative word there is planning, which a lot of people don't do. You know, they kind of piecemeal stuff out. And honestly, it is not that complicated. When we worked with Weather Shield, Danielle and Jennifer and I, we got on a call. We did some talking through about who are the audiences and what would give them the biggest bang for the buck right out of the gate, and what are some of the things we could do down the road that would help. But there's where you want to spend the time, is really having that conversation and having your marketing people, your product people, or your internal marketing folks and the video people all on one call, so that we can come back and go, oh, here's the best way to do that. And for every person, it's a little bit different.
And we, you know, Paula, you know, my love of lists and checklists. So we have a content checklist that we've developed just internally at One Bold Step, and it can be not just video, but any piece. Have we shared it here, 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 here? Nope, doesn't make sense to do it there, here, and not there. So we kind of make that a part of our process. That there's a checklist for content repurposing on everything. If you put the time into making a piece, you know, a unique custom piece, then you should take a few minutes to think about every single place that you could possibly use it. And that checklist just kind of helps keep it top of mind, right?
So I don't think we have to go into exactly why video, but there are some fun stats here, Cynthia, on, you know, really why.
Yeah,
And if you're trying to,
and I'm gonna just let you look at this because I want you to see there's some big numbers in there. 95% of a message is what people get when they watch it. Why? Because you're using all of your senses, right? Or more of your senses. You know, you're looking at something, you're seeing somebody touch and demo something, you're viewing it, you're hearing something with sound effects. I mean, it's a richer experience than just reading something. So I think that's a big part of why it works. The other thing I will tell you is that when they interview CEOs and decision makers, and Cisco Technologies does this a lot, what they discover is that even executives would prefer an executive report as a video. So I think it's important. I think that you can personalize it. People can see something. And really, I think Jennifer and Adam can tell you, I mean, it gets you noticed. If social media posts are done well, now here's the trick. You got to grab people in those first few seconds, right? Otherwise you won't keep them. But if you can grab them, that's great. And then, you know, Google sends you up in the search engine optimization when you have video. So I think it's important to do it and to think of it as an ongoing resource. It's not you do one and it sits there forever, but you consistently refresh it. And frankly, it's what people ask for. So if they're asking for it, you know, and that's how they want to consume it, that's what you need to do.
yeah. And I think about our visionary leaders who are so darn good at telling their story. Like they tell the story of why they started the company so well. Or if they have a really complex problem that they're solving. I think about, you know, we have a client who's trying to bring the research community in touch with the educators and the colleges and the people who are doing research. And you can read about that all day and go, what? But to hear the CEO say, we are connecting innovative thinkers and we're going to change the world. And when you hear him say it, you're like, oh my gosh, I get it. I want to be a part of this. So if you're dealing with, or if you are a visionary and no one can tell your story like you, video is a great opportunity. And working with people who can help pull the little nuggets out that make it understandable by others. Like Jim Bush tells a great story of Cynthia at but he says it in a lot of words. So you had to, you know, you just pull it together. And you did the same thing for me, right? When I was trying to explain why we started One Bold Step. So it's really helpful if you've got that vision, and the best way to articulate it is from the heart and from that leader.
Yeah,
It's also nice to have an expert tell you, stop looking at the screen or stop looking at the camera. I thought if I had $1 for every time Cynthia told me that when we filmed our video, so stop looking at that. Look at me, Adam. So having that constant reminder of what that production quality should be is nice too.
Nobody wants to have a video where you look like you have crazy eyes.
Yeah.
That's not a
so thank you. So we are doing really well on time, but like I said, we have a lot of questions. So a lot of questions that came through these pieces. So let me start with a Q&A. How long should my videos be? And what is the most effective limit of time you should make your video to keep a viewer engaged without wanting to leave before you're done? We got several questions around this topic.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about length. And I am gonna, like everything, there's a caveat. How long? Well, if you've lost someone's attention, it was too long. But the true answer is shorter than you think, right? So it used to be we would do company overviews that were 5 to 10 minutes. Now it's 90 seconds. I think most of the overview pieces and things that we do are in that 90-second range. Social media shorts, 15 seconds to 30 seconds. However, if you have a really engaging topic and you have really targeted technical people, engineers, product designers, people who are in a manufacturing plant, people who are really involved in e-commerce, and you're talking about something that's important to them, they will watch something longer. What I like to do is offer them the long version and the modules. So you give them the opportunity to watch it in 5-minute increments. So that's a little bit it. The other thing is that there is some evidence going forward that it also depends on the platform. So platforms like YouTube and some of those shorter, Facebook Lives, longer. People tend to join those kinds of things and stay there. And the more visuals you have, the better it is. If it's a talking head, people are less likely to be engaged. So sprinkling in some things, demonstrations or visuals or video of something is always helpful too. That keeps attention.
I don't see any other questions kind of piggybacking off of this, but if you do have them, throw them in chat and we'll kind of keep adding and keep trying to answer those as we go as well. So I'm going to move on to the next one. Do you think more people would watch a video live with interactive tools versus watching a 15 to 20-minute presentation on demand? And I think Jen, you had some suggestions here.
Yeah, I think the answer is both. So let me explain that a little bit. Anything that you are doing, if you have the guts to do it live, you absolutely should. If you are okay with a potential crazy question or error or saying something wrong, doing it live is awesome. The problem with doing it live is you don't know when somebody's going to be available to log on and watch it, and you are just sort of trying to pick the most open times, right? Everything that we do live, this webinar included, is also recorded. And it is recorded and it is saved in its entirety so that somebody can later go in and watch the 50 minute presentation on demand, and they can see what people were asking. So my inclination is to always do both, because I don't mind live. I do have, I have a couple of clients who absolutely get freaked out by the idea that it's live. Even if no one logged in to watch it, they think live and they're in a panic, even though there's no audience. But I recommend both. So Adam, would you add?
Yeah, I think I'd add that the pandemic has definitely changed things. People expect that your live talk is going to be something you're going to share after as well. And so I think it's expected that I'm going to sign up for this and you're going to send me this webinar or this live Q&A after the event, because I may not have been able to make it, but I'm just going to register because you're going to send it to me anyway. People don't ask anymore, they just expect it.
Yeah, and I think of the 30 some odd people who registered for this, there's 16 of you here right now. I'd be willing to bet that there's quite a good handful that are going, it's okay that I missed it. They're going to email it to me anyway.
Correct. I'll watch it on my own time.
Mhm.
What is the best time to post a video to get the most views? Cynthia, for this one.
All right, there's a couple of schools of thought on this. Again, it's going to depend on your audience. If you are going for a younger audience, more consumer-based, Thursdays, Fridays, early on the weekends. What we've discovered with our corporate audiences is that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, middle of the week is better, mostly because if someone hasn't been on email and their box is full on a Monday and they see your thing, they get it, they see something come through, they may not watch it. So we like the middle of the week. There is some anecdotal evidence now that partially because people, again, are home from the pandemic, people are working all the time. They're working on Saturday mornings, they're working, Sunday evening. I mean, I'm getting emails Sunday evening from people. So there are some people who think that, if you go early on a weekend, you might have a better chance of getting someone to view something because they may have a little more time. But the real trick to it is do you really care when they view it, or do you just care that they view it, right? We care that they view it. So when you post it, as long as you are consistently doing the marketing efforts to drive people back to it, it honestly doesn't matter when you posted it, as long as you keep up the promotion.
Good answer. That's a good reminder. It lives beyond that, just that one post. Is it worth it to pay for alternative video hosting services, something other than YouTube? And what factors do I need to consider when picking a video hosting platform? Should I just always use YouTube? I think there was quite a few of these comments too about just the tool set. And I'll answer this one. It's yes, at times it is. They've gotten, a lot of these platforms other than YouTube have gotten pretty useful about adding forms, adding call to actions. You can embed chapters right in and amongst them. So that's, if that's something that's interesting to your audience, they can pick what parts are interested to them in the video. That's key. I know YouTube does that now as well, so that's been a piece. I always ask the questions of, if you're going to pick a different platform, do you want people to go away from your site? What kind of design needs do you have? Can you track people if they do go away from your site? Because that's another large piece of, if you buy a platform, there's a lot more tracking to what people do and how often they watch that video. Good question is, how much storage do you need? How many videos are you going to make and populate? Does it make more sense to use YouTube because you can pretty much host as many videos as you want, or do you want them on your site? And then a big one that I don't think people think about until they kind of launch this or buy a platform is, who do you really want to manage it? Is it your marketing team? Do you have salespeople filming quick videos and sharing those in email? And do you want them to be able to upload that? Most of the time, I wouldn't want my sales team, no offense to any of the salespeople on this call or who's going to listen to this, but I don't really want them with my YouTube channel and posting videos on there. So it just depends on, who the audience is, who's going to be uploading, and what kind of needs you have. But there are definitely some great platforms out there besides YouTube. Cynthia, you had a couple other thoughts in regards to YouTube as well, right?
Well, and one of the things, the thing that I think a lot of people object to with the YouTube is all the ads and the things that pop up, and that can distract from your message. And I understand that. But I see a lot of my larger corporate clients who are using YouTube just because it's where people search. Sometimes people don't think to go to other places. And so if they're just trying to think about, okay, I'd like to see something on whatever, that's where they're going to go. And so I think maybe if you have a great presence and you've got a lot of audience and you can steer them to this other platform, understanding what Adam is saying you should look at, that's great. But it's pretty hard to drive the traffic that a YouTube drives. And so if you're just starting out, I honestly think, they've made it fairly simple. So I say, unless you're going to really, go full force into it, it may be your best option, at least at this point.
I just thought of this as you were talking, Cynthia, but even the educational, or how do I, the questions that gets answered on YouTube. So, I don't know how many times I'll go and watch a video on I just installed a dishwasher. It's like, well, how do I do this with this model? And there's somebody on YouTube walking me through the process that I couldn't figure out on my own, and went, okay. And so there are those educational components too. So definitely having that search engine piece for YouTube is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have any other questions, so I'm just going to keep going. What is the best way to call viewers to action at the end of your videos? What is the best way to sell in the video without being salesy? We kind of combine these questions here, but they're call to action, and then how do you not sell?
Well, one of the simplest things to do is if your video really is answering a very complex question or solving a big problem, you could simply put a form in the front of it so that people can't view it without telling you who they are. Now they might lie about that, but what I love about putting it behind the gate is that then I have the opportunity to do all of my follow-up emails and ask follow-up questions and try to get to the root of what's going on. And so my call to action isn't in the video, it's in the follow-up, is one of the ways that I do it. But CK, a little bit more to add there.
Yeah, so selling is not a dirty word. I think we need to remember that. But being salesy kind of is. And I think, you know, there's this whole move to real people and authenticity. One of the ways that you can sell, and one of the things that I really love, and actually we used it with One Bold Step, is maybe you don't need to sell. Maybe your best selling is having a customer talk about their experience with you and giving a testimonial about why working with you was a great experience and what their results are. And maybe you sprinkle some of those things, and maybe you end your product demonstration or your presentation by saying, you know, you might like to just hear from a few people that we've worked with and let them do the selling, because that third party endorsement, I think, is really important. I also think that when we put together a lot of videos, we really try to focus on the education, or what I will call consultative selling. So we're talking about that informational piece, and not that kind of in your face selling. And that seems to work really well. But I do think you could err on the side of, if you get too much to that side, not asking for the sale. And there's where I think, Jennifer, your forms and that sort of thing is, and frankly, it's something I didn't think about until Jennifer told us we should do that. So there's where that marketing expertise is really important.
Yeah, and then you can always go the way of the Holderness family and simply, like, at the end of your video, start pointing your fingers, sign up, subscribe below.
Yeah, we all have those
Me.
too. Like what you heard today, you can sign up below and get a, you know, like there's always that follow-up piece.
There is. Follow us. Yeah.
Follow us. So say you've done some do-it-yourself video, mostly highlighting culture. We jumped on the self-produced do-it-yourself video bandwagon that became popular during the pandemic, but you're ready to invest in professionally produced video for digital advertising. Where do you start?
Well, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if you have a head storyteller and they rock at telling that story, I would start there. I mean, it's going back to Simon Sinek, right? Start with why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. If you've got that storyteller that can capture that in under 2 minutes, or not under 2 minutes, and then work with CK & Co. or somebody else who can help distill that message, that's where I would start. However, if you sell something that requires a visual explanation for people to understand, like they have to see it going together, clicking together, snapping to understand why, then I would start more in the product demo space. So those are my two pieces there.
Yeah. And I might add one more too. And I love both of those. I think Jennifer's on the money with that. The other thing that I will tell you we're seeing a lot of is that people want to know more and more about the organizations that they're working with. They want to know what their culture is. They want to know, who is it that's making my widget for me? You know, what do you believe in? Are you a good corporate citizen? So we're seeing some people start with some things that are a little bit more about, less about the actual company, the history stuff people can read, and more about the who we are and why you want to do business with us, that corporate culture. And we've had a lot of people respond really well to that. So that's another thing to consider.
We have a client that piggybacking off of that, Cynthia, they have a tone, they have a voice, they know who they want to be in the market. And their CEO does a great job, their salesperson does a great job, but then they have an individual in their engineering. He's a software developer and he's quirky, and he does these deep dive with Derek's with the technology where he's, sometimes they're 3 minutes, sometimes they're 5 minutes, where he digs into a software and answers a question. And it's just quirky and fun, and it fits the culture. So everybody that they have on camera, no matter whether it's engineering, front facing, behind the scenes with customer service, they all know kind of that tone and that voice and that culture piece, and it resonates well to their audience. So,
and I think sometimes sometimes people are afraid. They go, oh, our engineers, they're a little quirky. And I go, I love those quirky people, because the people that they're appealing to are also quirky people,
Correct.
you know? So, or, you know, so I think it's really important that people kind of tell that story. Where you do have to be a little careful is if you are not, and I'll just warn you, there's some things I think people can do on their own. Something like that where you need to rein someone in and focus them and figure out how to pull bites out of things, then you're starting to get into, you need a professional, because that person is going to be listening and is going to understand how they can cut some things so you don't end up with a big long piece.
Correct. It's
Yep.
important too.
Yep.
Mhm.
So we have a question here. Do people want to know who for B2C or B2B? Do people want to know who for B2C or B2B?
So I think that was from Sandra. I think I saw that pop up. So what's interesting to me, Sandra, in that is that regardless of if you're selling B2B or B2C, you're still selling to people. And so in my opinion, it's both. I care about the businesses that I buy from, especially in more of a relational sale versus a transactional one. I want to know who they are. And that's both as a consumer and as a business owner. I don't know, Cynthia, would you add anything to it? And Sandra, if I didn't answer that question right, just holler.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, you know, and the concentration on people has become really evident in almost everything. I just saw a waste management spot that was done. They were doing some things on golf outing, and they're focusing on the drivers, right? The people who drive to the stops, you know, or people are focusing on, you know, the person who's making something. You know, it's a company thing, but people want to know. And especially I would say if you're selling to a younger audience, millennials specifically, they want to know a lot more about the relationships and the people who work for you, and are you a sustainable company? And, you know, so there's a lot of those things that come into play there.
It looks like you answered the question. So
Okay.
Oh, okay.
thank you. So how important is animation in the video presentation? I'm looking at using 3D CAD software that is used in manufacturing to show quality and value.
Okay. So let me tell you about animation. Animation is one word and there are many kinds. So let me just give you a visual. If you've ever seen the Duluth Trading Company ads, that's kind of line, and that's animation. Then there's motion graphics, and then there's highly animated 3D, 4D, which is what I think you're talking about here. Animation can be extremely important when you can't see something and you need to show how something works. So for example, if I've got a machine and I want to show the inner workings of that machine, or I've got a factory and I want to see how something is going through it, or a part, there's where you're going to use that 3D CAD software. We also use animation in a couple of places. We use them on what we call explainer videos, where you really can't get great video of something and you're explaining something really complex. And so there's a visual that explains it or walks it through. And then the other thing about animation is it's kind of timeless, whereas buildings change, layouts change, offices change, hairstyles change, everything changes. Animation is more timeless. So those are just some of the things I think you'd look at. And I will tell you that animation can vary quite widely in terms of budget. Very simple animations. I mean, we've done some that are like 25,000 for a very short piece, or 2,000 if you're using. So there's a big range there. You got to know kind of where you fall.
Okay. Paula had another question. Thank you, Paula. So she said, please talk more about promoting video. Once you post it to a social media channel, for example, how often should you repost it or provide links to it? I think that's a good question, just about, you know, that promoting and getting it out there again. Jen, you're muted if you're talking, so.
Sorry about that. I just look back at, you know, to Danielle from our team and Adam, talk a little bit about why you share our videos over and over again and how often you share them, and maybe even, do you see a decrease in the clicks over time, or does it stay the same or go up, you know, the more times that you share it?
Yeah, and I think there's a timing of when it's appropriate to start sharing that video again. Like, and you can always, even YouTube has analytics, so you can see, okay, we're getting traction, it's dropped off, give it a while, and then you can pick it back up again. So using data behind the scenes, I think, is important to know when to post that video again. If you're automatically getting more views and things on that, do you need to post it? It's working. And so that's another piece, just using the data to tell that story is huge.
The other thing, Paula, that I don't want to miss is that every time Danielle shares something on One Bold Steps social media pages that she thinks she wants a broader audience for, she makes a task for me to remind me to share it personally with my social audiences as well, which cracks me up because it'll just pop up and I'll be like, well, of course I'm going to share that. But had she not made me a task, I probably would have forgotten. But even within my own, you know, networks, how many of my people really saw the one time I shared the video? 5%. So I don't really have a problem with spreading it out and sharing it again at a later date. To Adam's point, you can use the analytics, but a little bit of that, in my opinion, is your gut.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of times where people post it once and they're done, and I really think you should look at, if you're a Reddit, if you read Reddit or you read BuzzFeed, you know, there's two examples, but there's times where 6 months, a year down the road, you get that same article, you click on it because it has that catchy title, and then you're reading it you're halfway down when you realize, I already read this, or I already watched this video, but it's still interest to you because, and they know it, so they've reposted, they give it some time, and then they repost it. And I think a lot of times you have to think of it that way, of like, get it back out there, make sure you're promoting it again if it was useful content to your audience. Yep. Cynthia, anything to add there?
Well, you know, there was one thing I was just going to say, you know, often people will say, gosh, I've seen that video. Internal people will say, I'm tired of seeing that video. I've seen, and I go, yeah, but other people haven't seen it. We have to be, I think, really careful that we don't put our thoughts and assumptions on something, and remember that what may be old to us is brand new to someone else. And there's where I think having that kind of professional guidance to put some things through, because I've had people say, well, I don't want to annoy my audience. And I do understand that. But I also think that there's so much stuff out there that people miss things, and it's easy to miss things. So there's where that resharing, I think, is often a really good idea.
So I think this is the last one. We are a very small business, 2 people. What video shortcuts do you have for a small team who has very limited time and resources? And then what editing software do you recommend for people who are doing videos on their own? I think both 2 really, really good questions.
Okay, so so here's the thing. When we talk about video shortcuts, obviously the easiest thing you're going to do is what Jen was talking about, which is kind of use the person who's the face or the persona of the business and do some very short video clips. And here's what I'm going to do. I am going to, I'll offer a tip sheet that they will send out with some tips for if you're doing your own iPhone video, what are some of the things that you should pay attention to? Because you won't remember it, but I'll give you this tip sheet. So the next time you go to do a video, you can pull that out and look at it. Let me talk a little bit about editing software. Editing software is extremely complicated. There are things like Resolve, which is free, not real intuitive. You've got Microsoft Movie Makers. That's another one that people use. I don't think that one's all that good. I think Final Cut is probably one of the best ones that people can use if you have Macs. And then Adobe Premiere. And Adobe Premiere is probably the one that I'd recommend the most. You don't need all the bells and whistles. What I would tell you is you can try it there's a free trial, and then you can do a subscription by month. So you could do a month subscription, see if you use it. And then if you use it, go on and get a year-long subscription. But if you're doing simple cuts and things, you can certainly do that on your own. Where I think it gets complicated is when you start to layer in animations and B-roll and some of those kinds of things. We use a system called Avid, and I even do not know how to edit on it because it's that complicated. I gave up doing it years ago. I oversee it now, but that's really more of an editor's system.
Thank you. Good one. So next steps, thank you all for joining. Please take our survey. Danielle has put it into the chat, so we'd love to get your feedback on what you heard and whether it was valuable. We will be sharing this as a video and a blog soon, so definitely share that. And if you did find it valuable, please share it with others and then give us some comments. And then thanks. We are going to postpone Q&A with A&J through the summer and just give it a little break. But we still love to hear what topics you would love us to cover when we come back. So you can email us at info@oneboldstepllc.com, or go to our website and put a comment form in if you want to. And then continue to follow us because we will be putting more content on our blog, and we'll always do that. So thank you very, very much for coming to this Q&A with A&J, and thank you, Cynthia, for
thank you.
So we really, really appreciate it.
Okay.